Welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at the NiceHCK X49. I had actually purchased this one back when they had their 5th anniversary Fukubaro sale, grab bag, whatever you want to call it. It was about $14. Today it looks like it's $16.99. So I actually had this one sitting on my desk for a bit, just never got around to it. With the new releases coming out, I just kind of never got around to it. After listening to it, I probably should have. So for those of you who don't know, this is a 1BA only IEM, kind of unusual, and we'll get to some of the more unique aspects of it in a second. So NiceHCK X49. I guess one of the things you should know that's not on my list is no detachable cables. So if you're not a fan of microphonics, this one's got plenty of it. So it kind of bothered me for a little bit, but then you kind of get used to it and just try not to move as much as you should. This one was actually made, they talk about it for audiophiles who like this sort of less bass music, tuning, balance tuning, neutral, all these things sort of tend to appeal to people who apparently, sit in chairs and listen to music and let it wash over them. Not quite there yet, but again, if you're really annoyed by cables, this one is pretty high up there. So 5 things you actually should know. This one is for the BA curious. If you really want to know what a BA only IEM sounds like, there's not really too many in this price range that you're going to run across. So if you ever had the inkling, and you should want to experience this because it's very cool. If you're just looking to upgrade your ZSN Pro, probably not. You're probably not in that BA curious family yet. But for those of you who have a couple, especially V-shaped, KZs, TRN, typical IEMs, you definitely might want to think about dropping $17 on a BA only solution just to hear what it sounds like, what that experience is. And that's sort of why I was not motivated to buy it, because they didn't tell you what it was when it was up for sale. But as soon as people kind of figured out what it was, and I was a little more interested in what it was going to be and then what it was going to sound like. So I definitely count myself in that BA curious family. The KB ear F1 was the same thing. When someone asked me if I was interested in reviewing it, and I'm like, whoa, BA only? Yes, I am. So yeah, I'm kind of a fan. I don't listen to them regularly, but for one of those things that you can pick up for $16.99 and experience this tuning, I think it's kind of unique and something worth considering. Second thing is there's a lot of people who are sick of all these V-shaped releases lately. This one is definitely neutral-ish, pretty much neutral, pretty much balanced. The graph doesn't look like a pure horizontal line. There's actually kind of a little peak in the treble, but it is, for $16.99, probably about as flat as you're going to find. So for those of you who are looking for something that's balanced and neutral, this should be kind of right up your alley. You just got to consider whether you can deal with the lack of bass, and if you're into a balanced tuning, neutral tuning, you're probably okay with that anyway. But again, for those of you who have a couple V-shaped IEMs and you're looking for something different, a new experience, this neutral style is definitely something that you might want to add to your collection and think about it at that price. So you get all that plus good tonality for $16.99, and very first impression, kind of out of the box, you're going to say, wow, this thing sounds just like my other IEMs. It's really hard at your first listen to really detect that it's a BA only until you really think about it for a second and figure out what's missing. It just sounds really good, really normal. I had the same impression on the F1. You're like, so what's everyone making such a big deal about this BA only? How it sounds so artificial and there's no bass. But on your first listen, you'll kind of be blown away about how normal it sounds, and you won't really pick up on anything kind of out of the ordinary. So I think good tonality is kind of a good way to describe that. It's kind of this end-to-end, pick a random song that's not super bass heavy, and you'd be like, oh, that sounds just as it should. And so even if it wasn't a BA only, at $16, it's actually not all that horrible. I had actually been trying out the ZST-X's, same price range, about $16. I would say the same thing, kind of out of the box. You're kind of mystified as to how they're selling it for $16 and what $16 buys you today versus what it did a year ago. It's kind of a good place to be this year, 2020, with some of these low-cost alternative options for you. So what does this thing actually sound like? Again, it sounds kind of like any other IEM, but what's going to pop out at you are the mids. So there's some other, a lot of hybrids lately have been trying to go for this mid-range clarity, really tightly constrain the bass so it doesn't bleed into your midsection. You sort of get that for free with this bass light BA only, because it's not really heavy bass at all. It's rolled off quite quickly. And as a result, you kind of experience the same thing, without them tuning it into it. So you end up with this midsection that's clear, transparent. It goes a little analytical because, again, you don't have a whole lot of bass. You don't have a whole lot of richness. There's no bleed there at all from the bass into the mids, so you end up with something that sounds a little more analytical than you're used to. So you take all that plus this wide sound stage, and you end up with these, super clear, intimate, transparent vocals right in the middle. The instruments kind of go out a little beyond your ears, and you end up with this, really nice midsection. And I can't really say enough about how good that midsection really sounds on a $17 BA only set. It's really good. Very much vocals. That's exactly where I was drawn to on the X49. Instruments are there, but the midsection is pretty much the primary pull on this guy, and it's balanced too. So this balanced tuning for me always kind of draws into the vocals because the instruments are supposed to be at the same level. So I notice the vocals, but perhaps you might notice something different. So I think the treble's good. I'm not a super fan of balanced tunings, so I would say it should sound more like a V shape. I wish the treble was a little more engaging, a little more lively. That's definitely my 2 cents on that one, and other people are going to probably say it's fine, but I just wish there was a little more. But that's the V-shaped guy in me saying everything should be a little more. So the bass, like I said, it's quiet room bass, armchair listening bass. There's just not much sub bass to it at all, and what's there kind of rolls off really quickly. So you get this mid bass, which is punchy, and it definitely feels kind of like a normal IEM on the mid bass, but you lack that power in the kick drums, where you're expecting this kind of sub undertone that just doesn't really exist on this guy. So you have to be somewhat careful of your music choices. You definitely don't want to go anything that where you're expecting to hear all those low tones. They're just not going to be there, or they're going to roll off very quickly. So it's very much, for me, it's very much a mid-centric IEM, and the music should somewhat follow that. And I will talk about the music in terms of Prince. My opinion on Tale of Two Princes, so When Doves Cry was the first song that I ran across that just popped on the X49. His voice in this soundstage, is perfectly centered. You hear that opening guitar riff, and it sounds just as it should. All that plus the tonality. You hear that in the guitar. The drums kick in, and it's the same thing. You get the nice snap of the snare drum, all the little kind of reverberations around the edges of it, all those little details, all that sounds, just as it should. And then you hear his voice, and his voice kind of matches this midsection because it's this analytical. Prince's voice is a little higher, maybe a little nasally, but that voice kind of matches the IEM very well. And When Doves Cry just absolutely, it's just this big wall of sound. It almost doesn't feel like a neutral, balanced tuning to me on that particular song. But it is. I mean, you listen to it, it actually is. But, you know, just how engaging and how nice the vocals sound. Hard to tell if that one is a neutral tune. And then you get to I Would Die For You, and then you kind of get what everyone's big complaints on the balanced tuning. It sounds a little lifeless, a little dull, a little recessed. Everything is along this kind of same linear sound stage. Nothing pops out at you, nothing engages you. And other than the vocals, I think I Would Die For You kind of gave me that typical complaint on this balanced tuning. And again, I'm a V-shaped guy, so I kind of immediately recognize that all the life has been sucked out of that song, and it comes across as a vocal as opposed to, you know, there's kind of a bunch of energy in those instruments, but you know, just comes across. I would call that one lifeless and dull, and When Doves Cry was kind of totally the opposite. So that's my tale of two princes. So again, this is kind of for you guys who are curious about a BA only, probably have some other IEMs, looking for a more balanced tuning. You know, I think there's a lot of reasons why people should look at the X49, pick it up at that price. There's not that many options, especially in the price range. But that's it. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.